ahead, Eric.
It's the only way I can adjust at the warehouse record level right now is by freezing the product. Is that a hierarchy issue?
No, that's an understanding issue.
Okay.
Okay, so asking, because again, what you're saying is the only way you can, say it again.
I make an adjustment, say safety or any of those issues, any of those parameters in the ICSW record for that product in that warehouse is by freezing it. And I'm trying to get away from those
I'm
manual.
with you now. If you're down at the individual, here's what he's saying. I load it in my company parameter to say use a 50% on A items. I've got this item I want to run 100% on. If you go down to the item level and change it to 100%, but don't tell the system something special, what's going to happen on the next forecast? It's going to go back to your company parameters and go override it. Now I'm with you. The little click freeze. So yes, you are understanding. I apologize I said that. So yes, if you want to change it at that level, you would have to click that freeze to say, don't override me from the company level. Now, I don't like freezes, and I especially do not like freezes that what? Are forever. Don't give me a reason. We're pushing on SX that checkbox should become like all the other freezes. How long do you want to keep this safety intact? Tell me about it the month before it expires and see if you want to keep it. Facts, same exact thing you're going to find, but the difference is if I want to override a safety percent and A+, down at the item warehouse level, I can do it, but instead of having to freeze it forever, it actually says, how long do you want this to stay intact? And I'll tell you about it before it goes away. You are absolutely correct. And anyone that didn't catch all that, you'll see that as we get into it. But everyone's understanding this hierarchy here, correct? You're going to set up your company level. You can put a lower level at a particular warehouse, a lower level at the vendor, and a lower level at the product line. But most of you are going to start here, and that will serve you well. Same with, now again, Eric's already down at the item level. Okay, some of you are already far enough along to be at the item level. Some of you don't need to be at the item level. You're just remembering things. I'd come back, set the company level, get rid of all my item level stuff, reforecast, reboot, and then go to the item level as I need to. I would not try to bring along all that baggage that someone else did, or when we didn't understand the system and all the things I was manipulating, I would come in and get a fresh start. So let's roll through first. Now I'm going to spend very little time here to help us safety, because these same slides I pulled in yesterday when we talked about status, ARP, and rank, and I did that on purpose. Today, if you notice, we hit it hard all day. There wasn't a lot of mingle-mangle and conversation. We had a full day of packing it in. We've got the same full day today. We got the same full day tomorrow. So I like doing review. I like doing the questions, but also looking always to where I can spare a little time to get us through. So you guys slow me down if you need to, but we covered these yesterday, so I'm going to go through these particular things fairly quickly and then slow down when we get to the next level. Status. We came back and talked in SX. If you want to stock an item, the first thing is ICSP. You have to have it active. And then, of course, you have to be at the ICSW, which, again, if you're a fax user, or an A+, this is the item warehouse level of this item. And it just says, yes, I do stock it at this warehouse. Then the second thing we talked about yesterday is, well, if I stock it, where do I get it from? Do I get it from the vendor, or do I get it from a warehouse? The ARP. All right, so I've decided to stock it or not, and if I'm going to stock it, where do I get it from? On fax, same thing. You've got what we call the master, so this is not warehouse specific. It just says, yes, we will stock this item somewhere in the company. Keep this SKU active in the company, and then we can come down to the item warehouse level and say, this one I want to actually replenish, have order points and line points versus order as needed, non-stock type item. Everyone good here? So that's the first part where everything applies. This is about your stock items. And then, of course, if I am going to replenish it, where am I going to get it from? Am I getting it from the vendor, or am I getting it from another warehouse? Someone tell me again why the ARP is so important. It does two things. They're both important, but one's extremely important and one's pretty important. The usage. It's your way of telling the system that, hey, I'm a warehouse and I have to bring inventory for my customers, but I also have 3 internal customers. And if I don't tell the system I'm giving them product, I don't have the ARP right, whose product am I transferring to them when I transfer? The customers, because we didn't bring any product in for them. Everyone good? The ARP is extremely important, because I go in the company and go, oh, that's that ARP, it really doesn't matter. I go, it's extremely important. It's where everything starts with usage. We'll be right there, Charlie. One more on that. The second thing it does, if it's an ARP vendor, is it going to show up on a PO or transfer? A PO. If it's an RW, it's going to show up on a transfer, and from what warehouse? The warehouse you said you're getting it from. So the ARP also makes it show up on the right suggested PO or suggested transfer. Go ahead, Charlie.
Never mind. I got it.
Okay, very good. I like those questions. All right. Now, just to bring this together for you, just a little summary. Again, in SX, if you want to stock an item and set it up for replenish, ICSP has to be active, ICSW has to be stocked. In fax, item file maintenance has to be stocked, and warehouse item file maintenance has to be restocked or checked. As far as ranking, we're basing it on hits. Every time we enter a pick ticket and pick it, every time we enter a warehouse transfer and transfer it, that's a hit. How many times we go to the pin, how active this item is. And again, we can set ranking based on either percentage or set hits. Again, in this company, and this is our standard we use for most companies, it ranks within a warehouse, bases on the last 12 months worth of history. I'm going to let my A's be the top 80% of my hits, B's 15, C's 4, D's 1. That's where most people should be today, something very similar to that. Now, someone already came up to me, David, a little while ago, and he went and ranked his stuff, and what's this going to do for me, this ranking? It's going to help me set parameters. You've seen that, right? Safety control for an A versus a D. It's going to help me do exceptions, but what it's going to do is help me prioritize my time, and he came up to confirm. And what you're going to find out is 80% of your business, 80% of everything you touch in that company is usually about what percentage of your SKUs? 15 to 20. It's even gone off the 80-20, about 15. In most companies, if we add up A's and B's, 80 and 15 covering 95% of their business, it's usually 25 to or less percent of their SKUs, 20 to 25. So what's the idea here? Wow, instead of watching all 100% of my SKUs regularly, I can watch my A's and B's, in the way I'm talking, cover 95% of what my customers and branches want from me, but only have to do 20 to 25% of the work. Because it's only 20 to 25% of my SKUs that's creating 95% of my business. Not that the other items aren't important, but God, I can get 95% of the benefit with 25% of the effort. Everyone seeing this? That's the idea. So again, SX, and then one thing I want to talk about here is all the systems. If I take a brand new item and rank it, and there's not something special, what's its hits on it before I've sold it? Brand new item. 0. And if we don't do something smart, it's going to make it what rank? E. And what do we think about E items? How quickly can I make them disappear and discontinue them, correct? We want to watch that. So the system's smart enough to come back if you set it up and says, any item that's less than 12 months old, don't let it go below a C. We got a hand up here. If it's already an A or B based on its hits, that's fine. But if it ranked out as a D or an E, move it back into the C, that fairground, until it's got enough history that we're really getting a real rank. This is really important for you guys to use that new ranking. Where was the question? Go ahead.
Right here. Where it says month used to calculate the rank is 12, we have it so that it recalculates every month, because an A in January might not necessarily be an A in December.
Right. Now, it's going to calculate every month.
Oh, okay.
Because it's going to throw, I'm going to still calculate, but it's saying how much history should I look at? So here's all it's saying. There's two different things. And you're on track, because I already saw your eyes lit up and go, I get it. But let me just put it out there. First one is how often we calculate rank. But the second one is what history are we going to calculate rank? And I've hit companies. This morning I gave an example of, there was a company out there using 5 years history to do everything. Cow. It used to sell really great 5 years ago, and it's actually dead today for the last 2 years, but since we're using 5 years, it's still showing up as a B item. Everyone there? So how much window? Now, I recommend 12 months. Some of you want to go to a 6 month or a 1 month, but what's the downside of that? If I've got anything like this, any seasonality, and I'm only ranking based off of 1 month's history, every month that I'm not in my season, what's it say this item is? A D or E, and it's really not. It's a D or E at this part of the year, but it's not a D or E in my company. So I like to use a 12-month window. If we were in June, it would use June through last May, or July, I'm sorry. Cue up 12 months hits and says, this is what I'm going to base rank on. Everyone there? So now I'm going to take in the low months, the high months, and get what's this rank for this product over the last 12 months. That's the first part. Now, the second part is how often do I want to re-rank? If I rank this month, it's going to use, theoretically it would have used May because June's not completed yet. So it would have been used May all the way back to June last year. Now next month, what do I want to do? I want to take in June, my new month. So I'm going to re-rank. It's still going to be based off 12 months, but now it's going to use June through July. You there? One is what history I'm going to use. The other is what you're talking about is how often am I going to redo it. Just like usage control. We might be using a 3-month window, but we're still going to recalculate it every month, throwing out the oldest month, bringing the newest. We're just always going to use a 3-month window. Very good. SX, same parameters. Dipstick on the other side or the blinker, but same things. What do you want to consider a new item? Anything less than 12 months. We're going to base it off of hits. Now again, in this system, you actually get to define how many ranks you're going to use. I like an odd number, most of us 5. Base it on the last 12 months of history. Anything that's less than 12 months, don't let it go below a C. And do you want to use percentage or number of hits? All the same parameters. And then over here, and again, I'll clear up that confusion from yesterday. I clicked on the A and said it's 80%. I clicked on the B, next 15%. I clicked on the C, next 4%. Clicked on the D, 1%. We're just loading up these parameters. Okay. Now, here's a little change that's come in SX. I forget which release it is, and I don't know how fax works. Someone might be able to address it. But one of the things that we run into is when you consider a new item, what do you consider a new item? Now, a lot of systems would do months, meaning this. Remember I said consider a new item for 12 months, don't let it go below C? But when does the clock start for 12 months? If I go and enter the product today, put it on my system, but it takes me 2 months to get it set up, 2 months to get it in, and 2 months for my guys to start selling it, 6 months of that's already gone by. Everyone with me? Of the clock. So that's all based off the enter date. And so what a lot of companies have come back, and we've done it in SX, they go, the clock should really start on first receipt. When I now have product available on the shelf to sell, now start the 12-month clock. Everyone there? Anyone that's been there that has long startup times knows exactly. It's already burned up 6 months of the window before we even have product to start getting activity. So that's what this is about. Does anyone know what fax does? Does it do it off enter date or first receipt date? Does anyone know? Because I do not know that question. We're going to have Mr. Tim with us tomorrow. Pardon me?
Is Tim going to be here for the Q&A?
On WebEx.
Okay.
I've got Tim Plotner coming in on a WebEx for fax. I've got Jim Kirch coming on the same WebEx for A+, and I got Mr. Jim Brown. I couldn't believe we landed Jim coming in for SX. So I'll be with us via WebEx, but we're working on the technology back here that if everything goes as planned, we will be able to hear them through the speakers, and they will be able to hear us, and it's almost like they're here when we're in the 21st century. All right, we'll see. Anytime we try this new technology, I don't want to say too much because we'll end up doing something squirrely, but we're going to try. But they're going to be here to help us. They'll have their systems pulled up so we can look at it if we want to go into something else, that type of thing. That's one we'll ask Tim. So again, I don't want to get too deep into this, but down at ICSW, which is in the frozen tab of SX, ICSW, it says, here's your enter date and your acquire date. Back here in SASO is where you're allowed to access it, so that's your access. And all the way up here in, there's where it's viewed from. That's where it's allowed to access. I missed it here, but I believe it's in AO. Or it's where do you tell the system which one you want to use? Because there's an overall setting that just says, do you want your start date to work off of enter date, or do you want your start the clock working off of first receipt? Now, just so you know, first receipt or acquired date, there's many ways we get product on the shelf. We may have brought it on PO. We may have billed it, do a work order. We may have transferred it in, but it says whenever we end up with inventory on the shelf the first time, start the clock. That's used in ranking. Later on, you're going to see it's used in surplus inventory as well. Let's now move into following the same pattern. You'll notice I'm a very pattern guy. You can almost predict me. We're going to go talk about order point. We're going to talk about line point. We're going to talk about EOQ. We're going to talk about P&A. When we're in the order point, we're going to talk about usage, lead time, safety, adjusters. All right? It's just that same pattern over and over. And then we'll talk about how do we get this stellar fill rate. This is a great order point. So again, oh, here it is. Oh, no, this is a different one. And again, SX. And again, we'll ask about facts. If we don't know, we'll find out, but I think I know the answer for facts. It used to be when we posted usage. So again, this is just posting the usage. Our systems traditionally posted usage when? When we invoiced and shipped it out. Everyone went when we invoiced it. All right, so even though they might have wanted it 3 months ago, and it was back ordered for 3 months, and we finally ship it today, our systems traditionally would have posted that usage in June, but if they really wanted it back in March, when should we have posted the usage to? We should post usage to when they wanted it, not when we were able to deliver it to them. There's a big difference. So that change has been put into SX. And again, if you go into AO, do you want to record demand based on invoice date, or do you want to record demand based on requested ship date? So if they requested me to ship it in March and I really didn't get it shipped to them in July, till July and invoice, you can still have the usage post back in March based off of when the customer wanted it, not when we got it to them. That should be a big one for a lot of people that do a lot of back orders or have extended lead times. So now let's go through. Here's where we're just setting up. I'm in SX, ICSR. I've come into here. I've set up my ranking, 80, 15, 4, and 1. Now I'm going to set up my usage months. I clicked on A. I want it to use a 3-month window. I click on B. I'm going to have it use a 4-month window. Click on C, 5-month window. D's and E's, 6-month window, 6-month window. God, we've already set up the ranking, and guys, we've already set up the usage controls. Then, I'm going to go all the way through SX on trending and then come back to facts. So I want to get, or on usage. I want to roll all the way through usage. So the first thing is, what size window do I want to look at? Trending and roll up. Now again, this is what I'm talking about, the SX kept intact. Well, some people may want to do it the old 80s way, which now, in my opinion, was a mistake. No one really wanted to go there. But you actually have to tell it. Do you want to use the old traditional usage, transfer usage, which does not work, none of you should be using it, or do you want to use the rolled up usage method? Is there anyone here that's not convinced to go use rolled up rather than warehouse transfers? Rolled up works a bazillion times better and is not broken. There's a few things in it that goes astray, but nothing like warehouse transfer usage. So again, old versus new. I'd make sure that is checked in your ICSR company record. Then here, the trending. How do you want it to apply trend for seasonal items? Do you want to do seasonal trending? Yes, anything that's seasonal, I want it to trend. And when it goes back and calculates the trend, I'm going to allow it to trend up to 200% on its own. And if it wants to trend up more than 200%, it will do the 200% and then tell me about it in the exception control center and say, you know, it looks like this item's up 800% over last year. And it may be, and you'll override it to 800, or you go, oh, that's because I didn't log 3 exceptional sales this year, and as soon as I fix that, we're only really up 198. You everyone with me? Because sometimes it's just bad data. So this is where I'm setting up my max and min trend, and this is where I'm saying, but don't try to do a trend if I don't have enough activity. Remember what trending is going to do? It's going to look at March, April, and May of this year, March, April, May of last year, compare the 2 time periods, and what if I sold 1 this year in that 3-month period, and I sold 5 last year in the same period? It looks like I'm running only at 20%. Everyone with me? 1 to 5. But there's not enough data really there to calculate a true trend. So all this is saying is I have to have at least 10 units sold in each of my 2 compare periods, or do not try to calculate a trend, run it at 100%. Now you guys stop me if there's questions, or I'm going on what I put up here yesterday and today. You're going, oh yeah, I remember this picture and I know what he's talking about. If you're not sure, I'll be glad to put it, I'll be glad to put it back on the board and show you how these things work.
Real quick, Grant. Back on the ranking with E being 0%. So basically, we're saying we shouldn't even have any E items, correct?
No, you'll have lots of them.
Well, but I get it, but it's just dead
What
inventory.
you just told me is I don't have any stuff that doesn't sell on my shelf for a year. You guys, most companies have a lot of stuff that hasn't sold in the last year that's not new.
Right, but the goal then would be to have none.
The goal theoretically would be 0. But now here's the key. When we get to surplus, I'm going to say that would be like the goal for fill rate theoretically should be what? 100%. But then something hits me in the face, and what's that called? Reality. How much it would cost us. Where I'm going is I'd love to have 0, not just E. I'm going to call it surplus. but the cost at some point is higher to get it to zero than it's costing you to sit on it. You following me? So I'm always going to work, hey, if I had to hire a guy and spend $200,000 a year to get it down to zero, but it was only costing me $20,000 to have it on the shelf, and where I'm going with that, most companies, if you can get below 5% long-term surplus, you're doing very well. Because if you push it farther than that, not that I don't want you to be lower, you're going to spend more money working it than it's costing you. Fair to go, Ron? Perfect. Okay. Again, so there's SX again. Moving over to the fax side, we're just building usage out. So again, on fax, now fax has a little bit deeper. If on SX you notice, we did not get the usage control split between ARP-Vs and ARP-Ws. We learned a lot between SX and going to fax. And over here, Tim's, anyone that works with Tim, he's a great developer, but he also gets things. Who knows Tim on the fax side? He gets it, though, also, which is unusual often in the software world. All right? He also gets it. And when we talked about this, now it's set up the same, but here it says I want to use a 3-month window on my A's for usage, 4, 5, 6, 6. It's the same, but, and even though this says seasonal and non-seasonal, there was a typo in here. This is seasonal and non-seasonal, not ARP-V and ARP-W. So I can have certain usage controls for my seasonal items, and I can have a certain usage controls for my non-seasonal. The key is, though, I'm setting this at the company warehouse level, system level, of how I want, what usage months I want on each of my ranks. When I go push the button, what's it going to do for an A-ranked item? It's going to put a 3-month usage window on it. And if next month I re-rank and that A becomes a C item, what's it going to do? Change it to a 5-month window. Unless, as Eric said, I locked it in and said, don't change me at the ICSW level. Systems work the same. Here's the trending. 50, now this one's set up as 250. Don't let it trend less than 50%. Don't let it trend more than 250. Now again, we learned things. On SX a minute ago, it was I have to have at least 10 in my 2 compare periods. Well, 10 may have been 1 hit, it may have been 10 hits. It doesn't show me a lot of activity. In fact, we change it to hits. I have to have at least 3 hits in my 2 compare periods to calculate a trend. Now I'm getting a little bit of eyes looking at me. Does everyone understand what I'm talking about, the compare period and this trending? Let me just put it up here for a second. Again, what we're doing with the seasonal item is here we are, and we're coming up to June. And we're saying, what's its usage? And we've got this set up as a seasonal or a T trend, 3 months, let's just say. So it comes back a year ago and says, grab June, July, August, and calculate the usage. It's 100. It's getting ready to use 100 here, but we're saying that will work good again if last year's tracking or this year's tracking last year. But if this year's doing this or this year's doing this, we have to account for that. So the system will then come in and say, oh, since I'm a 3-month window, look at the 3 months that just happened. Look at those same 3 months last year. And if during those 3 months last year we sold 50, and during these same 3 months this year we sold 250, our trend's running what? 5x. Everyone there? Or 500%. So the first thing that would happen, it would come in and say, hey, in this particular system, I'm going to allow you to trend up to 250 of that 500, but that's getting outside of our comfort level automatically, and I'll tell you about it through an exception. I wanted to go more. The second part of this parameter is coming back and saying, well, if this 50 was only 1 hit, and this 250 was only 2 hits, there's not enough activity to really base it on. There's just not enough there. So on SX, it says I have to have at least 3 hits in those 3 months, and 3 hits in these 3 months to even calculate the trend. All right, let's not go calculate a trend on a 1 sale versus a 1 sale. In SX, just since we were there, 10 units. This is hits. The hits definitely works better in units, but it still works. We just learn things over time. Everyone there? Everyone good? I just saw a couple of those eyes that were questioning. All right, now, last one. This is not an SX. SX has a threshold minimum order point, but it does not have a threshold minimum usage. Fax has a threshold minimum usage, and again, it's just coming out and saying, most of the time, sorry about this mic, you guys. See if I can adjust a little bit. The threshold minimum usage adjuster, I can set for this particular item. So remember, this can be at what? Warehouse level, from warehouse, vendor, all the way down to, I'm sorry here, warehouse from vendor, product line, item. Now I'm pulling an example. You wouldn't set this at a company level to say all your items should have a usage of 180. But all the way down here at the warehouse item, this particular item, we're saying never let the usage calculate less than 180. We think that's what our customers are going to buy. If it calculates 300, great. But if it only calculates 50, move it back up to 180. And anywhere that we have manual, we like to have an expiration date and a reason. And what it's going to do is tell you the month before it expires on SX and fax, hey, this is getting ready to go away. This is why we did it. Are you comfortable with that? And you'd look at it, history correct itself? Yeah. We've now caught history up. The T-min can go away. Or no, I better reinstate it for a while. We don't want it to unfreeze without you knowing, because there was a reason you froze it. And a third of those items, 2/3 of them have now fixed themselves. But a third of them what? Haven't fixed themselves by the time you're unfreezing. If you just let it unfreeze, it's going to break again. And your customers go, wow, you did good on that for 6 months, and now we're back into the hole again. This will give you an alert ahead of time so you can determine whether you want it to go away or not. Anything on usage? We set up the usage months by rank. We set up the trending. We set up, and then in SX we have the T-min usage. Anything there we need to talk about? Okay. Lead times. First off, we talked about adding fences around this yesterday. So in SX, same thing will be in a second in fax. It just says, if I've got any item out there in this company where the lead time went, the average lead time is less than 7 days, move it back up to 7. Why am I doing that? I know a lot of you go, I can get this in 3 days from my vendor, but this is going to move it back to 7. It's safety, but it's also just when you have really short, remember if you have a 2-day lead time, a 3-day, what's it say? I can get down to a 3-day lead time, place a PO for this, and get it there. It's just too tight, everyone. It's just too tight. And people go, but that's extra inventory. If I really can get it in 3 days and you're telling it 7, it's 4 extra days. I go, yes, I know that. But if we don't do this, by the time your buyers get to it, sometimes they'll go, gal, I already missed my window. So again, we're just propping the system up in this case to say, don't let a lead time for, in this case, vendors, lead times less than 7 days. And this particular company said, I don't have lead times greater than 60 days, so if something happens and we receive something out there after the fact or we miss exceptional lead times on an early order, knock that lead time back down to 60 days. So it's just some fences around your lead time. Then the same thing for ARPWs. What's the less and what's the greater? Now in ARPWs, you'll notice what we did here. We've locked them in at 7. Most of your guys' transfers are 3 or 4 days, but again, A, it's too tight. And B, we like to use a consistent lead time on transfers, not so much history, because we control it. So all this actually end up doing is, if you look on this company, any warehouse transferred item, ARPW, is going to have a 7-day lead time regardless. Now, part of us will say, well, Grant, I'll be right there. We got a hand up here. Why don't you just go freeze the lead time then? Because you can freeze the lead time. What about if you switch this ARPW to an ARPV? You've now locked the lead time versus this just keeps it in a motion, but we haven't locked the lead time. Go ahead with the question.
That's 7 days, that's Saturdays and Sundays as well?
Yeah, all of our systems are weekdays. There's none of these systems take into now, let me back up on that. A+, I believe, you got a very sophisticated calendar system, if I remember right. It's not fax. A+, where you can actually say, we're only open Monday through Friday, so therefore a month, isn't that A+? And therefore, there's only 20 working days in a month. Do you guys use it at all? Okay, because it got confusing, but I mean, I understood it. Fax and SX, it's a calendar month. There's 30 in I'll tell you right now, in SX, everything is 28 days. It just considers every month 28 days. In fax, everything is set up as a 30-day calendar. It counts weekends just like a regular work day. You want to talk about the issues, or you already know them and we'll just move on?
Good.
Okay. So now, we've set it up, and then we're just coming in, how do you want to calculate lead time? Let's use the average of the last 4 receipts, as long as they're not older than 6 months. And any lead time exceptions. If I have a 10-day lead time average, and I bring a receiver in, and it took 20 days, knock it out. Anything that's less than 50% of my current average lead time, anything greater than 150, don't include it in my buckets. Tell the human about it. Let them determine if that's a good lead time or not. So your fences around lead time, how we're going to calculate time, and what we're going to mark as exceptional lead times when they come in. Anything here you want to talk about?
Will drop ship, like receipt dates, will that skew?
Drop ships do not go in. Just what are drop ships? Or direct ships from? Now again, I don't want to confuse it with yesterday. Direct ships from the vendor to your customer. Lead time doesn't get included because that's not part of our normal replenishment, and usage does not get included normally because that's not part of what we want to stock on our shelf. Now, if we did that drop ship to fill in for us what we should have had, I would tell it to go to usage, but the lead time still won't come into the equation. Now, there was a bug in one of the systems, and I can't remember, I want to say it was SX way back, where drop ships were part of the lead time buckets, but that's been addressed way back. Everyone agree with that? There's no more directs going into our lead time. Okay. And then over on fax, same exact thing. Coming back in, if you notice, I'm in the lead. Now again, there's 5 different lead time settings here. So I'm in the replenishment parameter maintenance. I can click on abnormal lead time. I can click on abnormal lead time ARP transfer. I can click on how to calculate the lead time, and then the lead time for vendor ARPs and vendor transfer. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's what I'm doing here, just so you understand. So I didn't have 5 screens, you guys. I was saying, here, and here's a box for it, here, and here's a box for it, here, and here's a box. So I'm just trying to pull it all in. So again, coming back and saying, what's my lead time for my ARP vendor adjusters? If the lead time is less than 5, never let a lead time less than 5 days. This company imports, never let a lead time greater than 120 days. Over on the ARP Ws, transfers, this company's using a 5-day transfer system, lead time. So it says never allow a lead time less than 5 days, never allow a lead time more than 5 days. So what can I tell you the lead time is on every ARP W in this company? 5 days, okay? Then it's coming back and saying what is too much and what's too little. When do you want to do the exceptions? For again, for an ARP vendor, if it's less than 50% of my current lead time or more than 150, still record the lead time, put it out there in your buckets, but mark it exceptional and don't use it because it seems abnormal until the human looks at it. That's all it's saying. And then the human can say, put it back in, or gal, I'm glad it kept it out. Same thing for ARP transfers. Where do I want to run exceptions? And then, of course, the last part, how do I want to calculate lead times? This company's running on the last 3 receipts, so it looks at your last 3 valid, non-exceptional lead time receipts, not older than 6 months old, and that's how it comes up with your average lead time that we've been using to calculate our order points.
When you have vendors that where you try to help their performance by scheduling orders out further, so you're not really getting a true lead time, how would you handle that? So we're running into our busy season, and the vendor performance is suffering. So we try to help them by giving them greater visibility to our future needs.
There's 2 things I will talk about with that for a moment. First off, part of what's coming up here is they ship in 7, 7, 7, and then they hit a period for whatever reason, they get in their business, whatever, they jump out to 21, okay? And so we're just accounting for that, and what happened was the system was using the 7s, but we want to acknowledge the 21. If I have this, or even this, they ship me from 2 different factories. When they ship from this factory, it's 7 days, but then when they ship from the other factory, 21. And 7 and then 21. If you let it start doing the averagings of this, just depending on where it gets, you're going to have something that says 14, 16, 18 days. You're going to be overstocked when they ship it to you in 7 days, a little sooner than you really need it, and you're going to run out of stock when they ship it from the other factory 21 days. Everyone there? When I have this scenario, I always come back and say, you need to use their normal worst case. I didn't say worst case, their normal worst case. So what I would be doing is what? I can't use these because I don't know where they're going to ship from. So in this case, this vendor, and even just this right here, or it's knocking these out, it's going to do this for you. But what I'm doing is saying, I want the lead time 21 days on this. So now I can account for the vendor. But that brings up a second issue. Now, and this is the second thing I wanted to mention. What problem does that cause? When they ship it from the 7-day factory, I'm getting this stuff theoretically 14 days before I need it, and I'm actually paying an extra 14 days carrying cost to offset their, whether it's just 2 factories or they just can't get consistent shipping. And what I do then, I take over lead time. Instead of me giving a vendor to a PO and saying, when will I get it? Everyone there? I give a PO to a vendor and saying, I've given you ample time, 21 days. I want it to arrive. I don't know what 21 days from now, but let's call it June 30th. I think I'm close. Instead of them saying, when you get my PO, ship it, I switch it on them. I'm giving you the PO. I don't care which factory you ship it from, but I want it to arrive on June 30th. I've built in the 21 days, and if they're shipping it from the 21-day vendor, they're going to ship it pretty quick. If they're shipping it from the 7-day, they're going to sit on this for 2 weeks and still ship it to me and get it to me on the 3rd. Everyone see what I just did? I'm not using the vendor's lead time.